Ever wonder what happened to that groundbreaking TGIF sitcom about a Trinidadian family in Harlem that vanished after just one season? From Bill Cosby's surprise intervention to the star's simultaneous Disney blockbuster Where I Live, harbored secrets that made its cancellation even more shocking than its premise. Fact 1. Based on real life, Doug E. Doug's actual childhood, most sitcoms claim to be inspired by real events. But Where I Live took authenticity to another level by being directly developed from the actual childhood experiences of its star, Doug E. Doug. The show wasn't just loosely based on his life, it was practically a dramatized version of what he lived through growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Doug E. Doug, whose real name is Douglas Bourne, grew up in a household with a Jamaican father and an African-American mother, and the cultural clashes between his dad's traditional Caribbean values and the American way of life became the central theme of the series. In his stand-up comedy routines during the late 1980s and early 1990s, Doug would talk extensively about his family dynamics, particularly how his Jamaican father had very different expectations and values that often conflicted with what Doug considered normal American teenage behavior. These real-life stories caught the attention of television producers Michael Jacobs and Eric Van Loo, who saw the potential for a fresh sitcom that could explore immigrant family life in a realistic way. Interestingly, while Doug's real father was Jamaican, the show changed the family's background to Trinidadian, which also happened to match the heritage of Lorraine Toussaint, who was cast as his mother. Doug served as co-producer on the show, ensuring that the stories stayed true to the spirit of his actual experiences, even as they were adapted for television. The authenticity was important to him because he wanted viewers to see a genuine portrayal of what it was like growing up in a working-class Caribbean household in New York City, complete with all the generational and cultural tensions that came with it. Fact 2. Created by the Boy Meets World mastermind. The irony of Where I Live's cancellation becomes even more striking when you realize it was created by Michael Jacobs, the same television producer who would go on to create one of the most beloved sitcoms of the 1990s. In the spring of 1993, Jacobs had two shows premiering on ABC's lineup. Where I Live debuted in March as a mid-season replacement, and just a few months later in September, Boy Meets World premiered as part of the fall season. Both shows were part of Michael Jacobs' productions, and both aired on ABC. Yet their fates could not have been more different. While Where I Live struggled to find an audience and was canceled after only 14 episodes, Boy Meets World became a cultural phenomenon that ran for 7 full seasons, airing a total of 158 episodes and becoming one of the defining shows of the TGIF lineup. The contrast is particularly fascinating because both shows shared similar underlying themes about growing up and navigating family dynamics. But Boy Meets World focused on a white suburban family, while Where I Live centered on a working-class Trinidadian American family in Harlem. Jacobs had a proven track record in television, having previously created successful shows like My Two Dads and Dinosaurs, so the fact that one of his 1993 shows became a massive hit while the other quickly disappeared demonstrates just how unpredictable the television industry can be. Boy Meets World would go on to spawn a successful sequel series called Girl Meets World decades later, while Where I Live remained largely forgotten, except by dedicated fans who remembered its brief run. The divergent paths of these two Michael Jacobs creations from the same year highlight how timing, audience reception, and network support can make or break even the most promising television concepts. Fact 3. Bill Cosby personally saved it from cancellation. Where I Live owes its second season entirely to Bill Cosby, who stepped in during the spring of 1993 when the show was on the verge of being canceled after disappointing ratings. At the time, Cosby was one of the most powerful figures in television, having dominated the ratings throughout the 1980s with The Cosby Show, and he used that influence to advocate publicly for Where I Live's renewal. Cosby didn't just make a few phone calls behind the scenes, he actively rallied fans, and used his platform to generate support for the struggling sitcom, seeing something valuable in its portrayal of a working-class black family that he felt deserved a chance to find its audience. His efforts worked, and ABC agreed to bring the show back for a second season, with Cosby taking on an official role as consultant to help improve the show's quality and appeal. Having Cosby's involvement was seen as a major coup for the series, and there was genuine hope that his expertise and guidance could turn things around and help Where I Live achieve the kind of success that The Cosby Show had enjoyed. The show even moved to a summer slot on Tuesday nights after Full House, which temporarily boosted the ratings and suggested that maybe Cosby's intervention was paying off. However, when the second season officially began in the fall, ABC made the decision to move Where I Live to Saturday nights, which was essentially a death sentence for sitcoms at that time. Despite Cosby's best efforts and his continued work as a consultant, the show couldn't overcome the terrible time slot, and it was canceled after just 3 episodes of the second season aired, proving that even television's biggest power players couldn't save every show. Fact 4. The Saturday night death slot killed it. The scheduling decisions that ABC made with Where I Live perfectly demonstrate why Saturday night has long been considered the death slot for television sitcoms. After the show was renewed for a second season, thanks to Bill Cosby's intervention, it actually showed real promise during the summer of 1993 when it aired on Tuesday nights right after the hit show Full House. This strategic placement in a strong time slot temporarily boosted the ratings and gave everyone involved hope that the show might finally find its audience. However, when the official second season began in November of 1993, ABC made the baffling decision to move Where I Live to Saturday nights, pairing it with a new sitcom called George as its lead-in. Saturday nights have historically been terrible for family sitcoms because that's when the target audience is typically out doing other activities rather than sitting at home watching television. The move was essentially a burial, taking the show from a supportive environment on Tuesday nights and dropping it into a time slot where even successful shows struggle to maintain viewership. The ratings immediately plummeted, and ABC wasted no time in pulling the plug. The network had produced 8 episodes for the second season, but after airing only 3 of them, Where I Live was canceled for good in November of 1993. The remaining 5 episodes that had already been filmed were left to gather dust, not airing on network television at all. It's worth noting that many producers and creators considered Saturday night placement to be a clear signal that a network had given up on a show, and Where I Live's swift cancellation after the move proved that suspicion absolutely correct. Fact 5. 5 episodes never saw network television. One of the strangest aspects of Where I Live's cancellation is that nearly half of the second season was completed but never made it to air on ABC, leaving cast and crew members with finished work that audiences wouldn't see for over a decade and a half. The network had committed to producing 8 episodes for the second season, and all of them were filmed and ready to broadcast. But after the show's ratings tanked in its new Saturday night time slot, ABC pulled the plug after airing just 3 episodes in November of 1993. This meant that 5 fully produced episodes were sitting in a vault somewhere, complete with performances, editing, music, and everything else needed to air them. But no network television audience would ever get to see them. For fans who had invested in the show's characters and storylines, this abrupt cancellation was particularly frustrating because they never got to see how the season's story arcs were supposed to play out or what direction the show was heading in before it was canceled. The unaired episodes remained in limbo for 16 years until 2009, when the cable network TV1 acquired the rights to air reruns of Where I Live and made the decision to include all of the episodes in their broadcast package, finally giving viewers a chance to see the complete series as it was intended. This kind of situation wasn't uncommon in the 1990s when networks would cancel shows mid-season and leave completed episodes unaired. But it's still remarkable that these episodes eventually found their way to television after such a long wait, allowing a new generation to discover the show and see what might have been if it had been given more time to develop. Fact 6. Doug E. Doug juggled a Disney hit simultaneously. The year 1993 was an incredibly busy time for Dougie. Doug, as he managed to balance his responsibilities as the star of a weekly television sitcom while simultaneously appearing in what would become one of Disney's most beloved sports comedies. Where I Live premiered on ABC in March of 1993, making Doug a network television star with the demanding schedule that comes with filming a sitcom, which typically requires long hours on set, multiple days per week. Just 7 months later, in October of 1993, Cool Runnings hit theaters nationwide, featuring Doug in a major supporting role as Sanka Coffee, the laid-back pushcart driver who becomes part of Jamaica's first Olympic bobsled team. The timing means that Doug was likely filming Cool Runnings during the early part of 1993 while simultaneously working on Where I Live, or at the very least dealing with promotional duties for both projects as the movie's release approached. Cool Runnings became a massive commercial success, grossing over $154 million worldwide and becoming one of the highest-grossing live-action films ever released under the Walt Disney Pictures banner at that time. The movie's success gave Doug significant film credibility and name recognition that most sitcom actors could only dream of achieving. Yet ironically, his television show was struggling with ratings and would be canceled by the end of that same year. Doug later revealed in interviews that he had been attached to Cool Runnings for 3 years before it finally went into production. And he knew from the moment he read the script that the movie was going to be something special, making 1993 a bittersweet year of both triumph and disappointment. Fact 7. Flex Alexander's nickname came from his dance moves. The actor who played Doug's smooth-talking best friend Reggie on Where I Live didn't choose his stage name for marketing purposes. He earned it through his incredible physical abilities on the dance floor before he ever stepped in front of a camera. Born Mark Alexander Knox in Harlem, New York, the future actor started dancing in New York nightclubs as a teenager, where his acrobatic dance skills were so impressive that people began calling him Flex because of the way he could bend and move his body in ways that seemed almost impossible. His dance talent was undeniable, and it caught the attention of DJ Spinderella, one of the members of the legendary hip-hop group Salt and Peppa, who was performing at one of the clubs where Flex was showcasing his skills. Spinderella was so impressed by his abilities that she recruited him to join Salt and Peppa's dance troupe, and Flex spent the next 3 years touring with one of the biggest rap acts of the late 1980s and early 1990s. During this time, he wasn't just a background dancer. He also worked as a choreographer, creating dance routines for other major artists, including Mary J. Blige and Queen Latifah, which gave him valuable experience in the entertainment industry even though he wasn't acting yet. It was only after establishing himself as a respected dancer and choreographer that Flex decided to pursue acting, making his stand-up comedy debut in 1989 before transitioning to film and television. By the time he auditioned for Where I Live in 1993, he was still primarily known in entertainment circles as a dancer rather than an actor, making his performance as Reggie all the more impressive since it was his very first television role. Fact 8. It was Flex Alexander's first TV role ever. Where I Live represented Flex Alexander's very first experience acting on television, which makes his natural performance as the charming ladies' man, Reggie, all the more impressive, considering he had no prior experience in front of TV cameras. Before landing this role, Flex had only appeared in one film, the 1992 movie Juice, and had spent most of his career as a dancer and choreographer rather than an actor. Despite the show's critical acclaim, it was canceled after just 14 episodes, which could have easily ended Flex's acting career before it really began, but he persevered and continued auditioning for other roles. After Where I Live ended, he guest starred on shows like Sister, Sister, and The Cosby Mysteries before moving to Los Angeles in 1995 to focus entirely on building his acting career. The irony of his career trajectory is striking when you consider what happened years later. In 2001, Flex created and starred in his own UPN sitcom called One-on-One, where he played a single father raising his daughter. That show, which Flex not only starred in but also produced, ran for 5 full seasons and produced 113 episodes, giving him the long-running success that Where I Live never achieved. For his work on One-on-One, Flex received 3 NAACP Image Award nominations and 2 BET Comedy Award nominations, proving that his talent had always been there even during his brief time on Where I Live. The contrast between his first sitcom, lasting only 14 episodes, and his own creation running for 5 seasons demonstrates how much control and timing matter in television, and how a talented performer can overcome early setbacks to eventually find the success they deserve. Fact 9. Lorraine Toussaint was cast for her Caribbean background. The casting of Lorraine Toussaint as Marie St. Martin wasn't just about finding a talented actress. The producers specifically wanted someone who could bring authentic Caribbean culture and experience to the role. And Toussaint was perfect because she was actually born and raised in Trinidad. Toussaint herself acknowledged in interviews that her Caribbean background was a major factor in why she was chosen for the part, as the show depicted inner-city life for a family from that region, and the producers wanted that authenticity to shine through in the performance. She was born in Trinidad on April 4, 1960, and lived there until her mother brought her to Brooklyn, New York in 1970 when she was 10 years old, giving her direct experience with both Caribbean culture and the immigrant experience of adapting to life in America. By the time Where I Live came around in 1993, Toussaint had already graduated from the prestigious Juilliard School and built an impressive career as a Shakespearean stage actress before transitioning to film and television work. Her performance as Marie St. Martin received rave reviews from critics who praised her ability to bring depth and authenticity to the role of a hardworking Caribbean mother trying to raise her children in Harlem while maintaining her cultural values. Interestingly, this was actually one of Toussaint's first major television roles, coming early in what would become a highly successful screen career that later included starring in the Lifetime drama Any Day Now and earning critical acclaim for her role as V. Parker in Orange is the New Black. The decision to cast someone with genuine Trinidadian roots added a layer of credibility to the show that might have been missing otherwise. Fact 10. The show had predominantly white creators. Despite black cast, one of the most controversial aspects of Where I Live was the significant disconnect between the show's cast and the people making creative decisions behind the scenes, as most of the producers, writers, and showrunners were white, despite the show centering on a black Trinidadian family living in Harlem. Even the theme music was composed by a white musician, which struck many observers as odd for a show that was supposed to authentically portray Caribbean American life in New York City. Critics and commentators at the time noted that this lack of diversity in the writers' room and production staff likely contributed to the show feeling less authentic than it could have been, with storylines and dialogue that sometimes felt more like typical ABC sitcom fare rather than genuinely reflecting the experiences of the community it was depicting. This was particularly problematic because the show was based on Dougie Doug's real-life experiences, yet the people translating those experiences into scripts didn't necessarily have the cultural knowledge or lived experience to do so with complete authenticity. The issue wasn't that white writers and producers couldn't create valuable or entertaining content, but rather that the show's tone often felt indistinguishable from other TGIF sitcoms, despite being set in a very different cultural context in Harlem. Some reviewers pointed out that this creative disconnect became especially apparent when comparing Where I Live to The Cosby Show, which had succeeded partly because it made sure to include black writers and consultants as part of the creative team who could check the show for authenticity and ensure the storylines felt true to the black family experience. The behind-the-scenes composition of Where I Live reflected a broader problem in Hollywood during the 1990s regarding representation, not just in front of the camera, but also in the positions of power that shape how stories are told. Fact 11. It was a TGIF mid-season replacement that couldn't compete. Where I Live faced an uphill battle from the very beginning because it joined ABC's TGIF lineup in March of 1993 as a mid-season replacement, which meant it was stepping into an already established Friday night schedule that was dominated by some of the biggest sitcom hits of the 1990s. TGIF which stood for Thank Goodness It's Funny, was ABC's legendary Friday night programming block that had become a cultural phenomenon, with families across America planning their Friday evenings around watching shows like Full House, Family Matters, and Step by Step. These established sitcoms had loyal fan bases and had been building their audiences for years, making it incredibly difficult for any new show to break through and capture viewer attention in the same way. Where I Live was scheduled in the 9:30 time slot, sandwiched between these ratings powerhouses, and the show simply couldn't compete with the viewing habits that audiences had already formed around the more established programs. Being a mid-season replacement also meant that Where I Live didn't benefit from the heavy promotional push that fall premieres typically received, as networks tend to save their biggest marketing budgets for the September launch season when viewers are actively looking for new shows to watch. The show's ratings were consistently lower than the other TGIF programs surrounding it, which put it on the chopping block almost immediately, despite receiving positive reviews from critics who appreciated its more realistic portrayal of family life. The pressure to perform at the same level as shows that had been building audiences for multiple seasons was simply too much, and Where I Live couldn't overcome the disadvantage of being the new kid on a block full of established favorites. Fact 12. The show depicted a working-class Caribbean family, a TV rarity. Where I Live stood out from other black family sitcoms of its era because it deliberately focused on a working-class Trinidadian family living in a modest Harlem apartment, which was a stark departure from the more affluent portrayals that dominated network television at the time. The contrast with The Cosby Show was particularly notable. While the Huxtable family lived in a beautiful Brooklyn brownstone, with a doctor father and lawyer mother representing upper middle class or even upper class success, the St. Martin family of Where I Live represented a completely different economic reality. Doug's parents worked regular jobs to make ends meet, and the family dealt with financial pressures and lived in circumstances that were far more representative of actual immigrant working-class experiences in urban America during the 1990s. This made the show somewhat groundbreaking in its willingness to show Caribbean American life without the gloss of financial success, portraying a family that was proud and hardworking but definitely not wealthy. The decision to set the show in Harlem rather than a suburban neighborhood also contributed to this more grounded portrayal, as the neighborhood itself became part of the show's identity, with scenes of the teenage characters hanging out on their stoop, which they referred to as the center of the universe. This kind of specific working-class Caribbean representation was virtually non-existent on network television during this period, as most shows featuring black families either focused on wealthier professional families or fell into more stereotypical portrayals. Where I Live attempted to fill that gap by showing a family that was neither rich nor struggling in poverty, but simply working hard to get by in an expensive city while maintaining their cultural identity and values from Trinidad. Fact 13. Doug E. Doug started as a teen stand-up comic long before Doug E. Doug became a television star or movie actor. He was performing stand-up comedy as a teenager, beginning his entertainment career at the remarkably young age of 17. Comedy was his first passion and entry point into show business, and he started performing at clubs and venues around New York City while he was still in high school, honing his skills and developing the comedic voice that would later inform his acting work. His big break came when he performed at the legendary Apollo Theater in Harlem, one of the most famous venues in American entertainment history and a place where countless black performers had launched their careers over the decades. During one of his performances at the Apollo, Doug caught the attention of Russell Simmons, the influential hip-hop mogul and co-founder of Def Jam Recordings, who was always on the lookout for fresh talent. Simmons was so impressed by the young comedian's stage presence and material that he offered Doug an incredible opportunity to write and host a syndicated late-night television program called The New Music Report that Simmons was producing. This was a huge opportunity for someone so young, as hosting a syndicated television show gave Doug exposure across the country and helped establish him as more than just a local comedy club performer. The New Music Report allowed Doug to showcase his personality and comedic timing to a much wider audience, which eventually led to opportunities in film and television acting. His path from teenage stand-up comedian to Apollo Theater performer to television host to sitcom star demonstrates how his comedic foundation shaped everything that came after, and those early years performing live comedy gave him the timing and confidence that made his performances on Where I Live feel so natural and authentic. Fact 14. The character's future was planned but never shown. The writers and producers of Where I Live had ambitious plans for the second season that would have taken the three main teenage characters in very different directions, exploring how their friendship would evolve as they made major life decisions about their futures. The planned storylines would have shown Reggie, the self-styled ladies' man and good student of the group, being accepted to college and preparing to leave the neighborhood for higher education, representing the path of academic success that many parents hoped their children would follow. Meanwhile, Doug was supposed to enroll in junior college, but not because he was particularly excited about it. Instead, he would be giving in to family pressure from his parents who wanted him to continue his education, even though he wasn't sure it was the right choice for him. The most dramatic departure was planned for Malcolm, the impulsive and opportunistic member of the trio, who was going to drop out of school entirely and take a job as a stock clerk, showing a much different trajectory that would have created interesting tension and commentary about the different paths available to young people in their community. These diverging storylines would have added depth and realism to the show by acknowledging that not all friends stay on the same path after high school, and it could have explored the complicated feelings that come with growing apart from people you've been close to your entire life. Unfortunately, because ABC canceled the show after airing only 3 episodes of the second season, viewers never got to see how these storylines would have played out or how the characters would have dealt with these major life changes and the evolution of their friendship. Fact 15. Critical acclaim couldn't save it from low ratings. Where I Live became a textbook example of how critical praise and quality writing don't always translate into commercial success, as the show received widespread acclaim from television critics who appreciated its realistic portrayals and fresh approach to the family sitcom format. Yet it consistently struggled to attract the viewership numbers that ABC needed to justify keeping it on the air. Critics specifically praised the show for avoiding the stereotypes that often plagued sitcoms featuring black families during this era, noting that the characters felt like real people dealing with genuine issues rather than caricatures designed to get cheap laughs. The performances were also singled out for recognition, with reviewers highlighting how the cast brought authenticity and depth to their roles, particularly in the way the show handled the cultural tensions between Caribbean immigrant parents and their American-born children. Despite this positive reception from the people who were paid to watch and analyze television professionally, the general viewing audience simply didn't tune in at the levels that would have made the show profitable for the network. This disconnect between critical and popular reception is one of the most frustrating phenomena in television, where shows that reviewers consider high quality and important often get canceled, while more formulaic programs thrive simply because they attract larger audiences. The situation was made worse by ABC's scheduling decisions, which moved the show around and ultimately buried it in the Saturday night death slot, making it even harder for potential fans to find the show and give it a chance. Where I Live joined a long list of critically acclaimed television shows that were canceled too soon, proving that in the business of network television, ratings and advertising revenue matter more than artistic merit or cultural significance.